Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Hello, my fellow cryptopians. Today we are talking Bitcoin, Tether, True USD, PAX, and a whole stable of these stable coins, as they call them. One sec here. I'm trying to. Here we go. But it's been a wild couple of hours here in the markets. There's been a lot of fear over Tether, over Bitfinex, solvency. Nothing new. We've been hearing about this for quite some time, to be fair, but we saw some pretty decent action today in the stablecoin realm. So we're going to go over that, talk about what I have done, what I'm doing now, and hopefully this will help you guys. And we'll certainly look at some charts and take a look at price levels and things that I'm looking at here in terms of BTC, big picture, ETH, and some of these altcoins that I like. Now, personally, just so you guys know, I think many of the alts have bottomed out versus Bitcoin. I'm seeing a lot of these little pumps off the lows. It's looking good from a big picture perspective, but until BTC can settle down or show some renewed strength, I'm just taking it very cautious right now. And so we'll certainly take a look at some of these. So hold off on the symbols for now, and I just so they don't get lost in the stream. And when I'm done here with this quick first portion, I will certainly ask for some names, and we'll start going down the list. So welcome from Romania. Welcome from who else is here in the house? We usually have people from all over the place, and so that's always awesome. So let's take a look at the coin market cap here first. Let's go to the Tether chart because this is what the hoopla is all about here today. So if you look at Tether, it's bounced back a little bit, but if you go to the daily chart, let me go to the 7-day chart. Let me kill some of these other things here. Blow this bad boy up. And you can see here, right? So Tether generally has maintained its, parity to the US dollar in and around. And we've seen these bouts of instability here in the past. Last April was one. But you can see here over the last couple of days, there was some different events that really started to culminate here, right? You had exchanges holding deposits because of some of the backlog in Tether, Binance. There was some different things about that. KuCoin. There's questions about Bitfinex's solvency, and just people have been nervous. And so you saw a rush out of the Tether doors into some of these other names. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple had big pumps. True USD, we'll take a look at that, had a massive premium over Tether here today. But you can see here on the dollar chart, Tether was down, almost 8-9% here at the lows, just all around, and has since started to bounce. Not surprising. I expected a little bit of a gap closure here on this Tether. So if you were in Tether, certainly scary to see these drops because it's supposed to be a stable coin, but we always know the counterparty risks are still very real in this space here. So let me, how can I show this? Stop. Okay, there we go. And so it's just something to keep in mind, right? And I just always tell people, if you're trading crypto, one, just don't trust any single entity 100% with your crypto on the trading side of things, right? So, whether it's Bitfinex or Binance or even Coinbase, I just generally will not keep 100% of my funds on any single exchange. I don't use Bitfinex. Personally, I don't trust them. I don't use BitMEX. That's just crazy, the wicks there and the stop grabbers and all that fun stuff. I certainly use Binance quite a bit because I trade a lot of the alts. And so going over the weekend, I posted this chart here with the group here yesterday. And we'll go back to BTC here. But if you look at True USD, Binance does have a True USD Tether pair that they authorized for trading here. And I was looking at this chart over the weekend, and I remember posting this in one of the charts channels on our Slack group. And I said, I don't think stable coins are supposed to look like they're about to break out. And it was just one of those, you could see it coming. The pressure was building. We had seen this already, not to this magnitude, but if you guys remember back, I mentioned this in a video a while back. We see these spikes, a little spike here. And then over the last week or so, the parity between, or the premium, right, between Binance and Bitfinex, which are USD Tether-based exchanges, versus something like Coinbase or Bitstamp, right? The Bitcoin price was really starting to widen up quite a bit. And I'll be honest, I was getting a little nervous. I was thinking, man, there's people that are way smarter than me. They know way more about this than I do. and I'm just going to take the hints from the markets and move a little bit out. So over the weekend, on the Binance side of things, I didn't have any trades going, so I just moved out of out of Tether into True USD, and then I had a short entry on a different exchange, which I closed out yesterday. But and then waking up today to this spike, and so I moved out of True USD back into Tether just because, you know, my total account had a little premium on it waking up this morning to the FUD. And so I figured I'd bank it and then figure out what to do next. I'm definitely keeping an eye on this because, you know, worst case scenario, something happens to Tether, of course, this is going to pop. But I'd rather probably be in Bitcoin, to be honest with you, or something like that in that scenario versus another stable coin. I'd probably go with a true crypto, if you want to call it that. But you're seeing the pullback now. We saw peak fear here earlier near the highs. True USD had a premium of almost 25% versus Tether. One of the big ones. Another one was PAX, relatively newer one, smaller cap, just not a lot of liquidity in some of these names, which is why you see these big spikes. But this one also a 20% premium, and you're seeing these pull back now. So we'll see how far back they pull versus USD Tether. But I don't know if Tether is out of the woods just yet, right? So I think there's still some fear out there. I think you're seeing some profit taking on True USD personally, but is Tether out of the woods? Is Binance out of the woods? You know, who knows? And that's a good comment there. There is no safe space in crypto. And I have always said that, right? Because since day one, right, that's just always been the theme, right, with Mt. Gox and some of that. There is nothing that is 100% safe other than like your hard wallet, right? Hardware wallet. And even that, like there's ways to hack that. So just be careful, guys. Counterparty risk is still huge in the space, this young space. But one thing I would look at is, you know, there's news around Fidelity. There's TD Ameritrade is investing in exchanges and all of that. And, you know, I'll be honest with you. I have mixed feelings about this because, one, I fully expected, you know, the big trading institutions to come into the game. I mean, they're just not going to sit by and watch Binance and BitMEX and some of these places just milk it, right, and just make money hand over fist on all the trading. And granted, this is institutional, but they are certainly going to move into the realm of retail trading and apps for that. I fully expected that, right? And so, like things like Poloniex, well, they've been bought by Circle, but things like them, you know, KuCoin, Bittrex, some of these guys, I don't expect them all to survive, to be honest with you. I mean, they're either going to be bought out or they're going to just be taken out by some newcomers. And ultimately, it's going to be these big names, the Wall Street firms that are going to run the show. And that's, you know, that's mixed feelings for me personally, because I mean, one of the things of crypto initially was, you know, the whole decentralized nature of it, right? The fact that you can open up an account pseudo-anonymously on a lot of these exchanges and just deposit some funds and trade and do whatever you want. Now it's kind of like, okay, well, we're back to the status quo and these guys are going to control everything from that perspective. So that's certainly gone away, right? We're losing a lot of that. Everything's becoming institutional and everybody wants institutional for some reason. But that's kind of the magic from that perspective is losing, right? But on the flip side, right, it's just really annoying that we got to worry about counterparty risk so much in the crypto space. If some of these exchanges would just get it together, right, it wouldn't be so bad. But that's just a reality. And the second kind of big issue I have with the current exchanges that we deal with are the crazy fees, ridiculous fees. And I know you guys don't think they're that high because you look at the percent, you know, and I know there's ways around it, but for the most part, right, if you're trading and you're doing a standard maker-taker fee, you know, it's like between a 0.5%, 0.25%, sometimes more, sometimes 0.75%. But that is substantial, guys. That really adds up quickly. And if you do the math, you figure, okay, even if you had a small account, let's say you're trading 10K and you turn that thing over a few times and you make $100,000 worth of trades, I mean, round trip on a standard exchange is going to cost you like 20 or 30 bucks. Like that's ridiculous, right? For 10K. I mean, if I was trading stocks and they were charging me 30 bucks or 40 bucks to trade $10,000 worth of stocks, I'd be gone in a heartbeat, right? And so that's an issue with the current system right now, is the fees, in my opinion, are just ridiculously high. And that's why they're making money hand over fist. So it is what it is. And so we're going to see more of this come into the game. And maybe this will put some pressure on the current exchanges to tighten up a little bit. There's another article here, and I'll post a link when I'm done. It's the Tether exchange. So pretty interesting read, right? A lot of reasons of Tether and this recent Noble Bank that we saw with, Puerto Rico, kind of they're looking to sell that bank, and it was known to be one of the banks that Bitfinex was using and all this stuff. And so this is a pretty good little summary article about what's kind of really transpired over the last week or so, the last couple of days. And so definitely check this out. I'll post a link to that at the end. But it's by cryptoglobe.com. And so pretty interesting little summary read there. But TrueUSD selling off a little bit here. And so we'll see if this bottoms out. Where does it bottom out? It technically, quote unquote, broke out, if you want to call it that. Stable coins should not break out, but it broke out right around that 104 mark, a little bit higher, 104.5. So that's the level I'm watching to see if this thing fully retraces. We've seen this historically. If you go to the daily chart, minus this massive pump we saw, you get these spikes, and usually it settles down and it comes right back to parity, and you get these spikes, right? Today has been a significant exception of that. And over the last couple of days, we've seen this kind of just really starting to march up. And it got to a climax point here today with all of the FUD going around Tether. So just something to definitely be watching here near term. Now, on my watch list, I've got a lot of coins that I rotate in and out of this, but I always have BTC USD in 4 charts. I keep a chart of Bitstamp. I keep a chart of Coinbase. And I keep a chart of Bitfinex and Binance. Those are kind of the main 4. And usually I've been just tracking the Binance chart as my main charting, just because it's got good volumes and all that stuff. But lately it's been off because of this whole, disparity between Coinbase and Binance. So you can see here, it might be hard to read on the screen, but you can see Binance right now trading 67.62 versus Coinbase, 64.03. And so that's a significant difference, right? You're talking several $100s. And that's just largely due to the whole Tether thing, but not a good sign, right? Definitely not good to be seeing that. So we want to see that narrow back down and things to settle out. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days here as we head into the week. One thing I want to look at, if you look at the big picture daily chart, right? I'm using Coinbase here. We're still battling this near-term downtrend, and today's spike certainly pushed it above briefly, and it quickly pulled right back in. Now, yesterday, a couple days ago, we saw the big sell-off, and then yesterday we were looking at the pullback here that we were seeing on ETH and on BTC prior to this big Tether pump. But the big picture to be watching is prices are still very close to this significant support level. The yellow line here is at 6K, right? So that's just the psychological 6K mark. And then this blue box here is really the support, right? Really the support area. 6,100 has really been the level to be watching here. And so I'm going to be keeping an eye on this here over the next couple of days, because this pattern is really starting to constrict. You're going to see this this little blue line here. If I extend that out, right, I'm going to be watching for a potential break above and then holding this downtrend line. And it may signal a shift in the momentum here that we've seen since basically August. So, we've been seeing this lower lows, lower highs. If you guys remember, we were talking about this crazy low volatility period that we saw here for about a week. And then we had that big break last week. Massive volume came in on that, but then it held. I mean, on Coinbase, this thing went down to almost 6K. On Bitstamp, it was like 6,050. And so very, very quick push lower, but it held. And so we're still back in the box, back in range. I'd like to see this thing pop back over 6,700 and stay there, right? That'd be the key. If we can get over $6,700 on this and stay above, that would be ideal, would really start to signify a shift in the momentum. Bears losing some control, sellers losing some control. If you look at some of the short interest, you certainly saw a short squeeze today. There's the big candle. It bounced back a little bit. Some shorts came back in. On the Ethereum side, shorts were at all-time highs prior to this, and you saw a similar spike lower on Ethereum. So you can see those Ethereum shorts over the last day are starting to cover. So I'd be interesting to see if that's just a one-time spike because of Tether, or do we start building some momentum and shorts really start to cover here? That'll add a lot more support to the prices all around. And so that's what I'm going to be keeping an eye here. But for the most part, right now, just still very much in range. And this is really the levels that should be watched here near term, right? If prices start to get out above this range again, back above that $6,700 and stay there, that's going to really look positive all around. And then, of course, if they break support, you could see a pretty quick move to the downside. So we're in a very narrow range. I know it feels like a lot when prices move, 400, $500, but in the big scheme of things, you got to remember this in the big picture is a very tiny price range. It's a big percent move. I know Bitcoin was up 5% today, but in the big scheme of things, this is a small percent move. And so prices are just really continuing to narrow down here at this range. We'll see how this goes. I know there's a lot of people, popular people betting short. Some people are saying, no, we've hit the low and we're going to go long. And I'm just not going to pretend to know which way it's going to go one way or the other. Looking at the positive, of course, we have held support, but you got to ask yourself, how many times can this support line get hit before it finally cracks? And then on the other side, right, we're still making lower highs. And so that's negative, right, until we finally break that pattern. So until then, we remain in a relatively trendless market, right? Just not really conducive for more intermediate swing trade type of trades. Just because, I mean, if you want to do swing trading, you want at least a week or a week and a half of a trend. I mean, right now, we get like 3 days of a upswing or 2 days, and then it pauses and goes flat. Then we get downswings, but not a lot of momentum one way or the other. So still very much range bound. Quick question there on that, and that's a good point. So if you're trading on Binance, the fees are less if you have BNB. So and I totally understand that it gets to be much less, and it's tiered, and so you got to either commit to hold 500 BNB or 200. They kind of tier it up, and your fees get better, but they shouldn't. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. I get the incentive, but it shouldn't be that way, right? Because BNB in and of itself is volatile. If BNB was stable, I would say fine. But I mean, if I'm going to save, 0.2% and BNB drops 10%, well, that's not going to help me very much, right? So, and I understand that is certainly a benefit if you're holding some BNB, but still expensive. And I like BNB. Don't get me wrong. I like Binance. I use it all the time. But it adds up. Do the math on all the trading you've done for the last couple of months and figure out the total dollar amount and figure out how much in fees you have paid. And it'll really make you think. So, all right, let's look at some other things here. I'm going to go through some of the bigger names here. There's some other names that are moving too on the small cap space that I've been watching over the weekend, but we'll certainly cover those smaller ones. But I'm going to go through the big ones here. So looking at Ethereum here real quick. ETH. So I'm going to look at it on Binance. And you can see here just the crazy spike that we saw. Now on ETH, I did have a short trade open yesterday. I did take profit on half of that, and then I moved my stop to break even on the rest, and I get closed out when this crazy spike happened. But what I was looking at here, and you can see this is granular. This is the 4-hour chart, right? After the big move we saw last week, that big drop, right? That was this guy down here. I think it started on Wednesday, Thursday, and it just started to kind of rally and pause. And then we started to roll over, right? Make a little bit of a, change the pattern of this rising high. And so I went short here, and nothing happened for about a day and a half. I went short here. And then, I just kind of held it short over the weekend. I went short on Saturday. It was really the only trade I had going for the weekend. And again, it was not going to be like a home run trade. It wasn't going to be any of that. It was simply going to be a small risk reward trade where, you get out if it closes it above 200 or whatever it was. It was like right here. And then the downside target I think I had was like at 191 or 192. It was just going to retest these lows. That's really all I was looking for there on that. And so we saw a little bit of a spike, took that, and then kind of just bounced overnight. Excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong level here. That's how small it was. Here we go. This guy here. That was literally the trade. It was like tiny risk, just looking at a little bit of a pullback here. And that's it. It was literally a quick trade, got out, and then, of course, this craziness happened with Tether. But you can see where it paused, right back to the breakout point from last week. So it just kind of paused right at there. We're pulling right back to the 10 EMA, so that's what I'm watching. This thing got a little bit overheated as the panic ensued, but that's not surprising to see, right? If Tether became insolvent, or that whole thing went down, then I fully expected that there would be a rush into BTC, into ETH, into some of these names out of these exchanges, because if you look at what you could potentially see was like Bitcoin prices dropping on something like Coinbase and going through the moon on something like Binance because there's a rush out of Tether, right? So you would see a disconnect, a breaking of the charts there. And so that's what I'd be looking at. But for now, just prices are choppy, volatile, kind of just sitting tight at this point and watching BTC price action. I really want this guy to settle out because many of the small cap alts versus Bitcoin are looking pretty good. And I'm hoping that Bitcoin can settle out so we can start jumping on some of those trades. But we will definitely take a look at those. So looking at ETH, I'll go to Ripple real quick, and then we'll start cycling through some of these names. ZIL, yeah, we'll definitely take a look at ZIL. Augur was moving this weekend. Wabi, Mod had just crazy pumps. Who else? QuantStamp had a huge pump. I mean, there's a lot of those names moving right now. So let me look at the Ripple. Now, you guys know where I stand. After the whole swell thing, I figured Ripple was done. And that's pretty much how it's been playing out, that little bit of a double top. Then we saw that climactic drop here with Bitcoin and the rest of the market last Wednesday. And since then, Ripple has staged a pretty decent rally off of the lows. I mean, you can see it had that big move off of the lows. It was down like 20% that day and just rallied the next day up 17% before going flat over the weekend. And then yesterday just started to sell off again. And then, of course, today was one of the flight to quality names, if you want to call it that, up 27% on that tether scare, as I'm going to call it. But we're pulling back here right now, so definitely keeping an eye on this, see if it can settle out and make a higher low. You can see there's a little bit of support zone to be looking at right here, is that breakout point, prior resistance. And so that'll be interesting to see if it holds, or if that was just simply the end of the move, just a quick bounce up into resistance on the whole tether thing, and that's it. So daily chart, just very choppy. A lot of good volume coming in, but look at that wick, and it's still below the 10 EMA. The 10 EMA is below my 22 EMA. So not exactly a bull trend, but it maybe has finally formed a higher low. So something to keep an eye on. QuantStamp was one that I mentioned here. So this is QuantStamp versus Bitcoin. Just look at that massive volume coming in off of the lows. And there's a lot of charts that are starting to look this way, guys. This is the daily chart. And if you look at going back, to August, a lot of them have just started to go flat versus BTC. And so I'm starting to pay attention. If you caught my last newsletter, I was talking about that and saying, hey, there's a lot of names that are down 76, 80% versus Bitcoin, and thinking they may have found a low. So we're starting to see some of this, some more upside movements on the right side of the charts there. I know Wabi was news related, but you're seeing Wabi move, right? You saw that big old pump. Obviously, QKC was moving here the last couple of weeks versus Bitcoin after forming a big low here off the bottom. You can see that's going up higher, and that's still going. I mean, look at that. It's up 73%. It's still going. You've seen these shakeout attempts, and it certainly has gotten much more volatile here near the highs. I mean, look at how calm and steady this rise was for the most part. And then here last week started to get choppy, had another breakout, still getting choppy, but big picture, I mean, the trend's still holding, right? Still holding that 10 EMA on the daily. 2 moving averages are still inverted. So until that changes, you got to go with it. But I would caution that you are starting to see some divergence. Let me show the RSI here a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm looking at. But you can see there's a divergence starting to show up, right? RSI is not confirming the new daily price high. And so when I start to see that, just signals to me, heads up, caution, right? It's a yellow flag, just something to keep an eye on, because it just shows that the momentum is starting to wane, right? The buying momentum, the upside momentum is starting to lose a little steam. Doesn't mean it always collapses. Best case scenario, you get a new base, a new support zone being built up here, but there's something to keep an eye on. And you can see this thing ran right up to this resistance zone here. And so it makes sense if we saw a little bit of a pause right around here, but still definitely one that has been marching. What's the market cap on this guy now? Let me go back here. Guy is still tiny. Wow. I didn't realize it was still that small of a market cap. 53 million, not even 54 million. So tiny, teeny tiny, which means they could keep going. All right. So we've got Slovenia in the house, Los Angeles in the house, Australia. You guys are awake now? All right. Romania. Cool. Got a lot of folks here. Belgium. Awesome. All right. So I'm just trying to keep up with these comments, guys, here real quick as we start cycling through. So appreciate you being here. For those that joined late, we were talking Tether. We were talking BTC here initially. Let's take a quick look at True USD again, because that's really been moving today with some of this news. And, you know, as I suspected, it was probably going to pull back a little bit. And so far, you're seeing a little bit of a pullback there. So Chicago, Finland. All right. South Africa, man, you guys are up late. Denmark, Rob's in the house. A lot of folks from the group here. Thank you guys for being here. England, Captain Bumface. That's funny. All right, let's get to it. Let me go to some of these other names here. Tether moves more than NEO. Yeah, maybe NEO's the new Tether, the new stablecoin. All right. Now I missed all the other names. You guys wanted to check it out. Lisk. All right, we'll take a look at Lisk. We will look at. We looked at QKC. We looked at QuantStamp. Mod. Yeah, Mod was moving over the weekend along with Wabi. Let's take a look at that one here real quick. And so had a big push, and I'm keeping an eye on it because you can see the yellow line in the chart, right? It kind of just ran up to a prior resistance zone. Let me show you here on the daily chart. That was the level I was watching. You saw these wicks right into that. Doesn't mean it's done, but definitely one to keep an eye on. And in this market, guys, I just don't chase. I mean, I can't chase breakouts or anything like that. Unless you catch them early and jump on early, it's just hard to chase breakouts. You're better off always waiting for a little bit of a pause, even if it's on the 1 hour, right? So you could always look for these little pullbacks, even on the 1 hour right here, right? Those will at least give you a little bit of a secondary entry point that is not as high risk. When you see prices that are this extended from their moving averages, even the short-term moving average on the 1 hour, there's a good chance it's going to pause at least and let the moving averages catch up, if not pull back, right? You could see the RSI was way up here. So when you see those kind of moves, it's easy to get excited and say, oh my God, this guy's going up 20%. I'm going to jump on. But unless I catch them early, I just won't generally. Because big picture, they generally have been pulling back. We're in a pullback market right now, but some of them continue on, right? So you look at things like CMT last week was a very strong mover, multiple pullbacks, finally pausing here near resistance. But you can see this guy, right? It gave you the pop, another pop, and it gives you these pauses along the way that kind of offer good secondary entry points. If you kind of have you got to wait for them though, got to be patient. But you can see Cyber Miles has run right into resistance, and you can see that's where it's been pausing here for the last couple of days. Right now, it's making a lower high, and so move looks like it could be done for now. All right. So I'm gonna look at some charts here, but I want to kind of divert a little bit and talk risk reward proposition. I'm going to be releasing another series of videos, and I have an entire course on risk management, money management, whatever you want to call it, trade management. And it's just so important right now, guys, because if you're trading, and keep in mind, I'm talking trading short-term stuff. I'm not talking HODL. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking if you're trading, regularly, you have to have a risk management plan in place, right? And so when you look at something like this, like a Binance or Bitfinex, right? Let's say you said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go short right here because it looks like it's breaking down, and your strategy calls for that being a good short entry point. And there certainly would be nothing wrong with saying, hey, this guy looks like it's cracking from a big bear flag. I'm going to go short, right? Absolutely. That's fine, right? You take your signal, do what you got to do. But here's the point I'm trying to make. You always got to manage risk. You always have to have some position cap in place. So if I say I'm going to go short, let's say I jump in short here, well, then what's a reasonable stop position, right? You got to look at the chart. Where does it make sense that if you're wrong, your trade idea will be invalidated? What point in the chart will signal that, right? And so you got to look at that. And then the other thing is the risk reward ratio. Does it make sense to even take the trade? And everyone, this is a personal decision. Everyone has a minimum. My minimum is 2 to 1. If I can't make at least 2 times what I'm risking on a particular trade, I'll pass. I'll either wait for a tighter entry. Let's say it bounces back up, and then now this entry gives me a 3-1 or something, right? I'll do something like that. I'll wait for a better entry, or I'll just pass on the trade and look for something else, because there's plenty more that I can give you at least a 2-1. No need to chase these 1-to-1 risk-reward ratios. And so you see a lot of that. You see a lot of all in, all out type of trading. You know, when you're just say, I'm going to go 100% in here, and if I'm right, I'm going to kill it, and if I'm wrong, well then screw it. I'm hosed, right? I mean, just professionals don't trade that way, right? You guys got to manage risk. You got to keep your position sizes in check. And so the way I do it is, regardless of how wide my stop is, my risk per trade is going to be about the same dollar amount every time, because I just adjust my position size. So if I'm risking 5% on a trade, that's going to be a smaller position than if I'm risking 2% on a trade, right? Or vice versa. If the chart just makes sense because it's a volatile name that I got to give it a 10% stop loss or else I'm going to be wicked out, then I'm going to take a smaller position. I'm going to be half the size that I normally am, so I can let the trade ride. And so that's what I'd be considering. And I just wanted to make that point, just because I see a lot of stuff out on Twitter. I see a lot of stuff on, on different things. And it's one thing to make a call. It's one thing to say, here's what I think is going to happen, and be wrong. That's no big deal, right? As a trader, you're going to be wrong a lot. But it's another thing entirely to manage a risk, to say, if I am wrong, because there are going to be lots of times where you will be wrong. So if and when you're wrong, where do you get out? Don't ever find yourself in a position where your current trade is down 30, 40, 60%, right? That's just crazy. So that's that is my public service announcement for the day. All right, let's get to it. Neo. Oh, I'm going to go Neo Binance. Neo had a pretty decent pop here today. A lot of these names are just really starting to pull back hard. Cleared resistance too, so it's going to be interesting to see. This move, I would not consider it to be an organic move, right? This was very news-driven, very FUD-driven. And generally, those don't sustain, right? It'd be one thing if Bitcoin had a short squeeze and the rest of the market had this new bullish tone to it, but this is purely fear-driven. And so I'd be keeping an eye on it. But that being said, it could be enough to ignite some momentum, right? So you could be looking at that potential scenario. So that's what I'm looking at here, is these moves higher. And does the momentum start to maintain? Do they hold some support levels? So let's go look at Neo BTC, because I'm looking at more alt trades right now personally, if Bitcoin can settle out a little bit. So let me pull this guy out. It's not looking pretty from the BTC side, to be honest with you. It's just breaking down below resistance. Looks like we looked at this guy last week, and that's a little bit of a bear flag support that gave way a few days ago, and it's just still rolling over. Look at these moving averages. So until that changes, it's just not outperforming Bitcoin here. So if I had to pick between the two, I'd go Bitcoin until that changes. So that's Neo. Oh, let's see here. I'm going through the comments here. One sec. So Deribits as a BitMEX alternative, I've started to look into it, but I have not traded on it yet. So I don't have an opinion one way or the other on it yet. I know they have options and all that stuff. That's always interesting. So I'm going to be checking that out, but I haven't traded on it yet. I do trade smaller time frames, and lately that's because of the market environment, right? The market has called for not holding as long as I prefer to. Like, my personal preference is to trade a little bit more swing style, where I will hold a trade for a few days at a time and let things kind of play out. But when you have a flat environment, you really have two options: just don't trade at all, or you got to zoom in, right? And you got to capitalize on these smaller moves. But then that means more management, more time watching the charts, because you're now watching, these small movements, which you can certainly trade them, but you're talking smaller charts, smaller price movements, and they just don't lend themselves to being in a trade for a week or two at a time, right? I mean, this is 63 hourly candles, right? So you're looking at just 3 days, from peak to peak. So that's why I'll tend to, unfortunately, look at smaller time frames right now. All right, Lisk. So looking at Lisk here, and this is Lisk Bitcoin, by the way, on Binance. And so I'm going to pull this guy out. I've seen a lot of selling pressure here in the last couple of days. This is really dropping off. You can see it broke support. That yellow line I was looking at here was sitting really flat, and it almost looked like it wanted to get going here last week. There's that big green candle there. Well, not huge green candle, but a lot of volume came in on that move off the lows, but just quickly reversed, failed breakout, broke below support, and since then just selling off here. So certainly not my candidate right now that I'd be looking at here until it starts to bounce, reverse, maybe make a little bit of a double bottom type of pattern, but certainly not what I'm liking here from that long perspective. Vechain, let's take a look at WAN. Looking at Vechain, I was liking this last week, and it's, you know, it's still in play. It's still sitting tight, setting up potentially. It was breaking below this moving average, or excuse me, this trend line, and it still hasn't been able to recapture it. So until that happens, I'm going to just keep an eye on it for now. You can see this little zone right here is really what I'm watching. It was looking really nice, just marching off the lows, steady climber, cleared some resistance, and then just big smackdown last week. Has just not been able to recover since then. So for now, it's on the watch list. But I'm not doing anything with it. But I do like the bigger picture. I do like the daily chart that's kind of sitting tight here at the lows. And again, this is another example. Look at this guy. It put its low in versus BTC, you know, in mid-August. And a lot of these alts have done that after a significant slide lower. You're seeing a lot of these alts putting in a significant low. But the question is, now do we see some follow through, or is this just another dead cat bounce, if you want to call it that, another move off the low, which will ultimately end in a new lower low? And I think it's just going to depend on the name. Some names are looking pretty good. If you look at ZIL, not on there. Here we go. Looking at ZIL daily chart, again, another one I'm keeping an eye on. Let me clear some of these lines for you guys. Messy charts. But you can see here, just very flat versus Bitcoin, right? So if Bitcoin moves up and this holds parity, it'll do well, and vice versa. But you want these guys to start outperforming, right? So let's zoom in a little bit here on the 4-hour chart. And near term, it's just kind of stair-stepping its way lower, right? You can see this pattern. You got this high here. A lot of sellers showed up. Look at that huge volume on that wick, and that just lost momentum since then. We made a new lower high, big break when Bitcoin rolled over. And this was actually looking really good, by the way. I was liking the way ZIL was setting up, but then when Bitcoin rolled over, it just kind of took everything down with it. And since then, just making this new lower high. So until that pattern changes, just want to keep an eye on. You can say, hey, there's probably a little bit of a double bottom forming here. I would not argue with you there, but you want to see some follow through to the upside. You had a good opportunity here to break out and again rolled over. So nothing for me to do yet on this guy. Ethos was another one. You can see here, I was watching it yesterday, and this was one of the charts I was posting as potential entry point to be watching, but it broke right through and has since then just been choppy, not keeping up. And so right now it's off the list, but I was keeping an eye on it because you were just seeing so many of these moves. Look at the volume spikes off the lows. And so you can't write them off until they break below these most recent lows and make a new low, but a lot of volume showing up on these gates. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can see some upside follow through here. So Chainlink is one that's on the top of my watch list right now. I'm still liking the link. Here I posted a chart with some potential entries and exits that I'm keeping an eye on. And you can see this is a good example, right? It's not a huge trade, right? If you would enter up here, swing low would give you a stop of around 8%. Obviously, if you entered lower, you could put a tighter stop. And near-term target, I'm looking at right around that 62.95. Gives it about an 18% move, give you 2.12 risk-reward ratio. Now, you can quickly change those numbers. For example, if you entered here with a stop just below the swing low, same target, suddenly you're at a 5 R multiple, right? Huge risk-reward ratio. And so you can see how quickly that changes. Right now, with Bitcoin kind of being a little vulnerable here, I'm just not going to preempt it. I'm going to wait for the market to confirm one way or the other. But definitely one I like, one that's on the watch list right now. 0x. This one's been marching along. You know, I had the Coinbase announcement, and since then pulling back. Not surprising, right? Sell the news type of scenario. So we'll see. It was looking so good prior to the Coinbase announcement. It was on the list, but I just didn't do anything because of Bitcoin. You can see here, this was the setup I was watching. It had posted this nice big base, broke out, and then just started to consolidate and was looking for a breakout. And then Bitcoin kind of had that rollover, took it down with it. And then Coinbase announced, hey, we're going live with 0x. That's the big pop. And since then, it's just been drifting lower. So I'm going to just wait for this guy to settle out, see where it finds a new low. You can see there's a little bit of a lower trend line trying to establish, but right now, just not looking good. Below the moving averages, they're starting to invert. So you're still seeing some selling pressure. Coin, man, that one finally paused, right? That was moving pretty good for a while. So let's go to Saya. I'm going to go daily on Saya. Zoom out here a little bit, and you can see where it hit that major resistance point here. Let me close these other guys out. There's multiple hurdles along the way. That's going to be the case for most of these coins that have seen such a big drop, is they rally, and there's going to be just multiple levels of resistance that you got to keep an eye on. Right now, I'd wait on this personally just until we start to see some more momentum to the upside. It's a pretty decent pullback here. Okay, go away. But again, lower volume name. So I'll just be keeping an eye on it here, see if it can form a lower high. Right now, the level to be watching is at, call it 9190 Satoshi or so, but I'd be waiting to see if this can turn the corner. QuantStamp, we very briefly covered it, but definitely one to watch right now. So QuantStamp's been moving higher. I'm keeping an eye on this for a potential pullback. The breakout point, right, 662 is kind of the resistance it cleared, and the breakout point was down here near 609. And so this little box here, if it can pull back, if it pulls back that far, that's what I'm going to be watching out for. If we get a little bit of pullback, it may offer a secondary entry point. A lot of selling volume showed up, though, so definitely want to keep an eye on, because a lot of these names have had these strong moves, but just look at all that selling pressure that showed up right at the highs, just really put a squash to that rally. And so that's not ideal. Usually you want these big pops to move, and then as they drift lower, you want the selling pressure to be lighter and lighter. And all that signifies is, there's buyers waiting. They're not selling, but they're kind of for a new entry point. When you see that, that's just a ton of profit taking. But I know that we're in a little bit of a news-driven, fear-driven, so that could have been part of the scare out too. Most of the names, by the way, didn't keep up with Bitcoin when the Bitcoin spike happened. A few of them did, but most of them didn't. They drifted lower. Tron partnership with Baidu. Okay, maybe not. These whole partnership things, like, I'm not so sure they work anymore again. These crypto projects, like, we have a partnership. We have an announcement of a partnership. It's like, yeah, I don't think the market's going to care anymore. But looking at Tron, it had that big pullback last week, and it was already one of the early ones to top out. Pretty good bounce. Tron, Ripple were some of the bigger bounces off the lows from last week. And so now we're seeing if this can make a higher low, if that was the end of the move. If you go to the daily chart, I mean, can't argue with that. Still technically holding up, right? It's making a technical higher low and higher high. So, I'm not going to argue with that, right? You got this higher high potentially. So I don't know. Maybe good for a short-term trade. All right. QuantStamp, Tron, ARN. Let me see. Who else was moving this weekend? I'm trying to think. Augur was moving for some reason. I don't know if there was news behind that. Didn't see a lot of follow-through, though. It was a big spike in Augur and then just kind of rolled over. Not a lot of follow-through there. We talked Ethos. We talked who was the other guy? The other coin. Sorry, these coins are neutral. Oh, let me see if I have some other names that I was watching. QuantStamp. I think that was it. Oh, Aeon was one. That was the other name. And again, another one that had that big spike volume. And so far, this pullback is good, right? It's not as bad as some of these others, right? You see the massive volume spike, and as it starts to drift lower, this volume's coming in well above average on the sell side. But I'm keeping an eye on this here, right? It's trying to clear resistance. It tried on, I believe that was Saturday, just couldn't close above it. But a lot of volume coming in here near the lows. Big wick at the top, a lot of selling pressure. So just one to watch for now. But you're seeing that. I like the fact that we're seeing more and more of these spikes off the lows. Now we want to see them breaking out here. Any setups that I'm looking at, there's a few. I think probably one of the top ones is the one I just mentioned on Link. So Link BTC is probably one of the top ones that I'm looking at right now. EOS. Let's go take a look at EOS. I'm going to go EOS BTC here. Yeah, that's volatile. Wow. So, and look at this is the so many charts had this look, right? So they were moving higher. Whoops. And then when Bitcoin did its spike, the Tether FUD, the fear, most of the other names did not participate. You saw Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I believe Ripple kind of were the leaders from that perspective. There's some few small caps, but a lot of them just pulled back in that instance. But big picture, there is a little bit of a divergence to be keeping an eye on here. If you go to the 4-hour chart, you can call that a little bit of a double bottom, right? You can see this spike lower, this most recent spike lower. RSI did not confirm that most recent spike lower. Tons of volume. Now it's starting to bounce a little bit. And so potential little double bottom here on this 4-hour chart. Small, not a massive, pattern here versus BTC. And it's certainly going to face a lot of resistance kind of going into these trend lines here, and most certainly into, this little zone right here. That's going to be where a lot of resistance is going to show up. So that's what I'd be watching near term. But for a short-term trade, maybe setting up. The thing I always keep an eye on too is when these moving averages are just declining like this. I don't always have to wait until they invert again, but I certainly want to see prices start closing above them as a potential early entry for me, right? If they're still living below it, I just tend to wait a little bit just because it's still signifying some seller pressure, but not bad, not too shabby. Icon, thank you for reminding me. Icon was moving nicely. Looking at ICX now. ICX, I was in ICX last week and I got stopped out with the Bitcoin sell-off, and that was that guy right there. And it was kind of annoying because ICX had this nice little base. I entered, it pops, trade's good, it's in the green, and then smack, stopped out. So it is what it is, but it's moments like that you're happy you have a stop because the loss is minimal. If you hadn't managed it, you could have moved it to break even, but at the lows you were down 12%, and that's just too much for me personally. So, but it is moving nicely off those lows. Again, another potential double bottom, similar candidate, but it's going to be facing some hurdles until it clears that resistance near the highs. But you can see this most recent low, a lot of volume coming in here on this recent move, and it is breaking out technically. If you look at this as a double bottom, it's technically breaking out, and so that looks good. Now I'm going to be watching this, what is that, 1061, 1060 around there, see how it does as it approaches that. But Icon, a lot of volume, probably one of the stronger names today, so good to see that. Yeah, Icon, and there's a few of those names that always happens with. I think Quantum's another one where it's just like a tough trade. Yeah, Quantum did it last week too. You can see it was breaking out, had that big volume spike. Yay, we're gonna get going. Bam, smack down. Oh, it's never easy. All right, guys. Let's see here. Let's be honest. Tether isn't gonna die anytime soon. I don't know. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. It hasn't died yet, right? So let's put it that way. There's been lots of FUD around it, but and one thing I've learned is in this industry, anything can happen. And so I am not gonna bank the value of my accounts on Tether being solvent. So definitely want to keep an eye on. And I still use Binance, and I'm going to be trading. I'm still traded out of Tether earlier today. So go back to this guy here, right? So technically I'm in Tether as we speak, right? I moved out of True USD. And again, I had no idea True USD was going to spike, right? This was purely a security play for me. It was like, well, worst case scenario, right? Nothing happens. True USD settles down. You're down a few percent. Worst case scenario, Tether blows up. At least I'm not in Tether. And then I wake up to this spike. I didn't catch the exact top. I wish I would have. This happened overnight. But I wake up to a spike, and I'm like, bank it, right? Shoot first, ask questions later. All right. Let's see here. So we'll do a few more, guys, and then we will wrap it up. It's a little later than usual on my day for this, and I haven't had lunch yet, and I feeling the dullness kick in. Could use some coffee. All right. So we'll do a few more. Any other names you guys want to look at here? Zcash. We'll look at Nano, Komodo, red. Oh man, I remember I posted red the other day. I was like, the markets, the move is over when red starts pumping. Let's see. We looked at ICX. We looked at Quant Stamp Tron. All right, let's cycle through some of these here pretty quickly. So Populous. This one always has such big moves. This one's tough. This is a tough one because it pumps out of nowhere, but it doesn't sustain. It just kind of puts them down. But you can say, hey, there's a little bit of a double bottom potentially forming here on this guy, but it's just bouncing right into resistance. You can see the moving averages are still inverted, so it's right here. It's like right at resistance right now versus BTC. Feels like a little bit of a bounce. Lower volume on that bounce following this big sell-off too. So until that resolves itself, I'd be cautious with that one. Nano, has Nano come back yet? Nope. Nano's not back yet. So Nano just continues to drift lower. Now it's right at support, so it's going to be interesting to see if it can finally hold, but so far hasn't been able to turn the corner yet. So that's the level I'll be watching. If it starts to close below, let's call it, what is this here? It starts to close below 2640 or so. Not going to look good on this guy. It is oversold near term, but then again, it's not exactly strong either. You can see the moving average is just still inverted. And look at the 10 EMA on this guy on the 4-hour chart. Right, just has been a place of support resistance all the way down. So until that resolves itself, gotta lean bearish on that guy. Oh, Request Network was moving yesterday. How's that looking? Hey, that's not too bad. Nice little secondary entry potentially forming on this guy. Big volume. I'm going to have to definitely put that back on the watch list. So looking pretty nice here. Big volume spike. Very choppy here yesterday. But holding these moving averages, letting these things catch up. So definitely want to keep an eye on here. Look at the daily chart. Not too bad. A lot of volume near the lows here. So big resistance is going to be that 975, 977 area. That's going to be the first key level to be watching. And it came really close twice here the last 2 days. So it'll be interesting to see if it can break out. Cardano. We've not looked at Cardano yet. Cardano could not clear resistance last week and just has really rolled over, not outperforming BTC here yet. A lot of volume coming in today, so let's see if that's a little bit of a low being put in. You can see it looks similar to EOS, where I had that big spike, then Bitcoin spiked, and this one pulled back in, but not as strong from that perspective. And near term, right, that's your resistance to be watching, this little zone here. Sorry. That guy there. All right, so that little window in and around that 1150, that's going to be your first resistance to be watching. If it can get back above that, then it may be back in play. But for now, still just kind of drifting lower here. Vechain. Sorry. Let me look at Vechain dollar here real quick. Nice. Nice little move. Maybe it's finally putting in a low. I'd like to see it confirm on this hourly. You can see it potentially put in a higher low. Look where it did it, right above this this support. So that's definitely one to watch. Not too bad here. Had that breakout and hasn't, a lot of these names are pulling back here, but that's the big question is, do they hold that support and start to move higher, or is that it, right? Just one of those moves that just fizzle out. And so we'll see. Not too bad here. I'm liking that guy. Let me see. We did WAN already. We did Wabi. We did Zill. I think we did Zill. Vechain. Oh, this one's funny. Did you guys see this? Save node. Save node. Help, everyone. This is the new stablecoin. It's called Save Node, right? It just has been right around 4 to 5 cents for the last 3 days. So that technically makes it a stablecoin because it's way more stable than Tether. So Save Node. That's a joke. Don't go buy Save Node. All right. Oh, basic attention token. Let's go look at that guy. BAT. BAT's just been a choppy one here lately. I was looking at BAT because remember when 0x got added, somebody made a good point. They said, hey, maybe the other ones will pump in anticipation, right? Cardano, BAT, Lumen, Zcash. I thought that's a good point. They might, right? And you saw a little bit of movement. You saw basic attention move last week, but it just fizzled out, right? That was this move here. I started keeping an eye on it because a lot of volume's been coming in. So I definitely want to keep an eye on, right? Because, you know, they have that pump going into the Coinbase listing if that happens. But if, like most of them, I think it'll be a sell the news event anyway. And so definitely want to watch. But this one's just been a tough one. Just so choppy here. This is the 4-hour chart. You can see just not a lot of upward movement. It had that move last week and it just fizzled out. So relatively flat overall. If you look at lumens versus BTC, same thing, just drifting lower, broke below this trend line here. So we'll see what happens here. But there's a lot of volume coming in here today, so maybe it's finally found a low. Also a bullish divergence here on this 4-hour chart. So you got this low here, and you got another low here, slightly higher low on this RSI. So definitely want to watch, but until it breaks this pattern, right, this downtrend, I'm not going to do anything just yet. Zcash is another of the Coinbase names. We already looked at Cardano. If you look at Zcash again, you know, not a lot of excitement yet here on this guy, just still drifting lower. And this one's on a lot of other exchanges, so I'm not so sure it'll be that big of a deal if Coinbase lists it. But it could be. Digibyte. Digibyte. Although Digibyte has been wild. Digibyte. Interesting. Now, hold on. Who is this? Somebody was posting Digibyte in the group here. Let me see. Is that you? I'm trying to pull up my chart here real quick. Digibyte. Wabi. There we go. Okay, a little bit of a different setup. But looking at Digibyte there, it's definitely channeling here. This is the daily chart, right? So kind of taking a wider view. And that's really the two levels I'm watching. This support, which has been holding around that 349, 350, whatever you want to call it, and this overhead resistance just above 400. And so that's really the level to be watching. If it breaks out of that, it'll be a good channel breakout to the upside. Just putting in a big base right here at support, but for now, it's just kind of neutral in my opinion. There's not a lot of up or down. It's definitely holding par, kind of, versus BTC. It's lower cap, smaller volume name, but we'll see. Digibyte. See if we can break out. Save node is pumping. Oh my goodness. I didn't buy any yet, guys. Don't go buy it all up yet. I need at least buy me one save node. Sorry to offend you, man. You're not talking to me, right? Nobody offends me. You guys are all good. Even the crazy comments don't offend me. Okay, maybe they do. Maybe a little bit. The proof of a 30 network here. Man, that's some good volume coming in on POA. I haven't looked at this chart in a while. Remember when POA was supposed to be like the next Ethereum and was going to rule the world and everything? Wow. But yeah, it looks like it may be putting in a good low. Another one of those names, right, where it's like maybe bottomed out in April or August, excuse me. And check this one out. This one has a pretty good divergence here that showed up in August, right? This is the daily chart, by the way. And RSI, nice strong move. A lot of these moves have this name, this pattern, excuse me, but testing resistance right now. So definitely one to keep an eye on. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. See if we can break out here. It's been pretty wild here the last couple of days. Should I buy? Should I sell? Neither. All right. Oh, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to go through a couple more here. We did Tron already. Oh, MDA. Is that still going? Totally missed this, by the way. It kept showing up on my alerts. I'm like, what the hell is this MDA? I've never heard of this before. It just kept popping up, and I just watched it go. Oops. But, yep. We'll say it's getting pretty choppy here. To me, this feels like a distribution phase. You know, after that big run up it has, look at the volume coming in. I would be cautious here. I mean, here's how I would do it. If I was in it from anywhere along the way, I probably would have taken profits by now anyway. Would I buy it here personally? I would not. Just so you know. That's me. Now it's going to probably go up 10x from here. We just looked at lumens just now. POA, BAT, ZIL, we looked at those. All right, so we're going to do a few more, and then we'll call it done. So let me cherry pick a few more names here. Komodo, I've not looked at that guy in a while. A lot of these lower volume names, they kind of fall off my radar. But yeah, similar. Like a lot of these names, just putting in these big lows. A lot of volume spikes coming in. But this one traditionally has these, so I'm not sure if it's as significant, but it's trying. It's trying to settle out and put in a big low. And a lot of these names versus BTC, I just want Bitcoin to just start breaking resistance and start trending higher a little bit. And it just feels like so many of these alts are just ready to go. So can't wait. Enough of this small, choppy, crazy action. Vechain and cash. All right. All right, two more after this. Hey, Ben, Crypto Odyssey in the house. What was your pick this week? I got to go look at the chart now. I forgot what your pick was, Ben. Let's see here. Crypto Odyssey, Crypto Nucleus Vision, and cash. Man, see, you threw me all off. Aeon. All right. Was that your pick? Or go look at it. We just looked at it right now. But all right. So Ncash. Man, is that a triple bottom? Maybe. Putting in a pretty good low here. Just putting a big base like so many, but it's not exactly strong either, right? So don't get me wrong on any of these. They're just kind of going flat, but maybe they found a low here. So going back to Aeon, definitely on the radar right now. I'm liking it. Maybe putting in a higher low. So keeping an eye on here. This near-term action had that strong breakout. The daily chart looks good too. You know, just a lot of volume coming in. Not as high volume on the sell side as some of these others. So we want to see it hold. And really the level I'm watching is at 720 in and around there. If we can start to clear that, you may see a little bit of a run over the next couple of days. ARN, didn't ARN pump already? Or did it fizzle out? Well, it's quite the pullback here over the last week. I mean, it's already had a strong move. It's only up. It only went up 300% in the month of September, well, early October. We'll see if it can pull back. I mean, big picture again, small cap names, right? When they move off the lows that much, it's a lot, no doubt. But if they get going, they really can move them. So you can see where this paused, right to resistance. It just went right to that prior base, and a lot of sellers showed up there. Just real typical action. Okay, one more. I'm gonna go with the bigger cap name, guys. So no offense, I don't mean any disrespect skipping those smaller cap names, but trying to concentrate on some of the bigger names. Ontology, let's look at that one. Have not taken a look at that guy. Ontology, this one's been known to have those big moves higher. Let me go to the 4-hour chart on this guy. Again, another one that last week was just looking so good. Started to move up, pull back, nice little secondary entries, and then just really rolled over when Bitcoin sold off and has not been able to recover. You can see where it bounces right into these moving averages and then just sells off. So we'll see if it can settle out finally. There's a big wick here at the bottom, like some of these other ones. And so is this a double bottom? Maybe, but what I want to see is some upward momentum, some stronger volume coming in as well if they get going again. How's this one look on the USD USD Tether pair? See, it doesn't look too bad from this perspective, right? It had this drop, big volume spike, and a lot of these names have pulled right back to what I would call a near-term breakout point. It's not even really a breakout point, but you can see this resistance here over the weekend, broke out, pulling right back, trying to hold up. So see if they can hold up from that perspective. Let's go back to Bitcoin and Ethereum real quick before we wrap it up. Looking at Bitcoin on Binance, it's just kind of still drifting lower. Looking at it on Coinbase, holding these moving averages here a little bit. So we'll see if they can settle out. And I want to see some follow through, right? We all know that this spike was very event driven, but we'll see if this is a little bit of a bull flag forming and we start to break. And as I said, I mean, big picture, we're still very in this range, right? Still in the box. I want to see this thing close. For me, if it starts to close above 6,700 on a USD pair, right, that's going to be very positive. I'm going to start to like this momentum going to the upside. And then, of course, on the downside, below 6,100, even, obviously 6K would just not be good. So between now and then, it's just choppy range, in my opinion. If it can hold up and start to show a little bit of strength, I think a lot of these alts are just ready to roll. They're primed. They're setting up for a little bit of a rally. So we'll see if that plays out that way. Looking at ETH, just a lot of distribution here on this rally today. So you can see there's similar price action, popped right up, holding back to this moving average. Now the test, right? Does it hold or does it just roll right over and break below support? It's going to be the way to look. So true USD still pulling back here a little bit. So looks like a lot of profit taking from that scare. And we've seen this in the past, not to this magnitude, but we've seen this in the past where it has these spikes and it pulls right back and kind of just settles out. So we'll see how far further back this one pulls. And there's another one, PAX. There's a few of them, but I'm not. These are just so small volume-wise. Right? They're very liquid, so they have these spikes and these big moves. So I'll link these 2 articles we talked about here earlier, and I'll post these in the description. I'll update the notes when I am done with this stream. But guys, thanks for being here. As always, stay safe out there in this crazy crypto trading world, and we'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.